episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor.
Welcome everybody again to another episode of our show with another truly fascinating guest who is definitely involved in creating a better tomorrow for all of us. We are honored today to be joined by Ryland Engelhart, who is the executive director and co-founder of an organization called Kiss the Ground, which is a nonprofit that is dedicated to planetary regeneration. And he is also the producer of the Kiss the Ground movie, which recently premiered on Netflix. Mr. Engelhart has spent the last 15 years of his career as an entrepreneur, working in hospitality and building a fabulous family business of organic plant-based restaurants called Cafe Gratitude and Gracias, Madre, located in Southern California. He is also the co-creator of an award-winning documentary film entitled May I Be Frank, which outlined the transformational aspects of a vegan lifestyle. Mr. Engelhart is a public speaker, a community organizer, and he works to, as he said, inspire more love and gratitude in organizational culture and in culture at large. He speaks routinely on the topics of sacred commerce, gratitude, love is an inside job, 10 tools for building community, and planetary regeneration, and is also the host of the Kiss the Ground podcast entitled We Can Do This. Mr. Engelhart is also a husband and father. He lives on a 17-acre regenerative farm in Fillmore, California, where he practices a lot about what he preaches in these various modalities. Ryland, thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to come talk to us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for the invitation. Glad to be here.
It's a real pleasure. Ryland, I'd like to start off as we do by just giving you the floor for several minutes, just to talk a little bit about yourself, a little bit of your background, of how you got started in all of this, and at the same time, if you could also, I know that your parents have been very influential in this process as well, and they've I saw that they also authored several books on the topics of sacred commerce and gratitude and so forth. If you could talk about them a little bit too, I think that'd be a wonderful way to start off.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. So, yeah, I they say an apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and as many sayings, they're oftentimes pretty true. And yeah, I grew up with I grew up on a small old dairy farm that was no longer operational, but it was a small farm in upstate New York where my father and his brother had married twin sisters, and we all lived in one house, one bank account, and it was definitely kind of a back to the land hippie expression of life, and grew up a lot running around naked outside, playing with living things, and no TV and no plastic toys, and so, and there was an element of sort of my parents' view, which was that we are all cells in one body. There was a kind of a new age, but informed by many kind of spiritual traditions, sort of spirituality and philosophy that we're all one. And I know we hear that a lot in many different places and circles, and but yeah, that I would say that was a big informing sort of principle of my observation and my view of life, was that we're all one, we're all cells in one body trying to work together for a greater whole, a greater symbiosis. And so that led me to have the opportunity to be go to a Waldorf school, and an alternative framework high school, and I was very challenged through school. I had a lot of learning disabilities, which has definitely been a barrier in my life. And I didn't go to college I kind of just went right into the world of trying to figure out how I could make my way. And but really, I think where it brought me to was a deep reliance on emotional intelligence and human relationship building, to where that was how I succeeded, because I didn't have a lot of the skill sets that many other people did. It relied on the ability to create meaningful, connected human relationships. And so I would say all that is a backdrop to, you know, my folks started a business back in 2004 called Cafe Gratitude. I joined them within the first year, and we built a one restaurant concept called Cafe Gratitude into 8 over the first 10 years. And then, you know, ended up going and doing 15 restaurants over 15 years. We closed 7 of them over a period of time, because we kind of started in the Bay Area and ended up in LA. But currently we have one restaurant in the Bay Area, and then 6 restaurants in Southern California under the 2 names, Cafe Gratitude and Gracias, Madre. And all those restaurants, again, deeply embodied that kind of backdrop of what I was sharing earlier, which is, you know, how do we create a spiritual or a philosophy of goodness and contribution and kindness and interbeing and interconnection into the world of business. And that's kind of what sacred commerce is, you know, creating, how can we create a condition of harmony, love, contribution, service, well-being inside of business, which is oftentimes pretty extractive. And so did that for 15 years, and was an amazing learning journey of customer service and you know, managing people and the difficulties that come with that, you know, many lawsuits, and you know, it's a challenging thing to run businesses, especially with, you know, a stated higher ideal, because that gets challenged and, you know, turned into a lot of things. So anyways, that was kind of that was 15 years leading up to this point. 7 years ago in New Zealand, I was there speaking on sacred commerce, and also showing the film that I had made called May I Be Frank to audiences, and kind of had the opportunity of sitting in a panel discussion called Can Human Beings Sustain Themselves on Planet Earth? The 6 out of the 7 experts said no, we're heading into a 6th mass extinction. It's worse than we're being led on to believe and know. And then the 6th person spoke was a guy by the name of Graham Sate, who was a consultant, sort of soil scientist, agronomist, agricultural consultant, basically shared a story of how photosynthesis, microorganisms, and soil and carbon are all tied, and that photosynthesis is the driver that's changed our climate over time, over millions of years, and been the driving kind of mechanism. And that if human beings could understand that they are part of nature and that they manipulate land, and in that manipulation of land, they're either maximizing photosynthesis and the ability to capture and cycle carbon, or they're just gaping, gashing soil and releasing the carbon, which is the largest carbon storage shed. If you think about all the trees on the planet, all the carbon in the atmosphere, or all the carbon in the soil, there's far more carbon in the soil than there is in the other 2 places. And there's a lot more room where that in soil for the imbalance of carbon that's in the atmosphere. And so I saw for the first time, I saw a threaded, a circle became complete in my mind of how life could be better in, you know, 5-7 generations forward. It was kind of like the earth went from being flat to the earth went to being round, that I could see that there was a cyclical cycle that nature is always operating inside of, but we as kind of a free radical inside of nature are operating outside of that comprehension and that understanding. And if we could operate inside of a symbiosis and being a healthy bacteria instead of a free radical, we could actually bring that carbon back into the ground. We could heal our soils. We could feed people nutrient-dense food, and we could bring greater resilience to farmland. We could bring greater prosperity to, an industry that's, basically been driven by slave labor and previously slavery. And it just was like the most hopeful and the biggest opportunity that I had ever seen on planet Earth as far as an idea whose time has come. And my mind and heart erupted with, this is true, possible, and I'm going to give my life to being an advocate and an emissary and a messenger for the possibility of regeneration. And so I built an organization with one of my childhood friends in my living room to begin with, called Kiss the Ground. And now we're 8 years old, nonprofit organization that has 4 different programs. We create media that tell the story of regeneration. We create advocates. We train people to be advocates and educated, whether it's through gardening or through advocating through your school system, your church system, your community system about the potential of regeneration. So we have an advocacy arm. We have a media arm where we tell stories. We have a training farmer arm where we train farmers to be able to transition their land through mentorship, through technical training, and through soil testing. And we also work in policy using our educational tools that we've built as an advocacy organization to empower political will and to people to understand regeneration, so that we can build policies that support those kinds of that kind of agriculture versus the antithesis of regenerative agriculture. That was a long answer.
No, it's a great answer, and it's a great introduction to where I want to go. But beautiful. It's a wonderful story. Is that before we started, I watched the Kiss the Ground twice now on Netflix. Wonderful a documentary. One of the I had. Earlier in my career, I was fortunate enough to have some exposure sort of to the ag tech space, and was exposed to this concept of all this stuff that we don't normally think about that are under our feet. And as you mentioned the word symbiosis a bit in terms of not just the biomass and the plant roots, which we don't normally think about, but the microbes and the insects and everything else in terms of the minerals and liquids and everything that gets trapped under there. It's been going on for 1 billion plus years now. But in a very short period of time, as you've highlighted in the documentary, we've come along and we've done 2 pretty nasty things. We like to plant these annual crops and rip up that soil and denude it and tear apart that symbiosis. And then at the same time, you highlight this this German chemist who was sort of the father of chemical warfare, but we got pretty good at making pretty nasty pesticides and herbicides that not only kill off stuff we don't want, but kill off a lot of the stuff down there that we do want. Talk about how in about a century, we've destroyed quite a bit that Mother Nature created for the last couple of billion years in terms of the soil.
Yeah. So, most agriculture, there's a quote from Wendell Berry that says, "The plow will kill more men than the sword." And what he meant by that is that the soil is the source of all of our sustenance, our nourishment, what sustains life. When we cut that ground open and we degrade it ongoingly, unconsciously, to, as you said, plant annuals and the same annuals in a monoculture way, that system degrades over time to where you can't have a civilization existing on that land because you can't produce the sustenance to sustain it. So, FDR said a nation that destroys their soil destroys themselves. We've, tilling the ground, the Dust Bowl was created from, tilling the ground that had been built in the symbiosis of grazing large herds of herbivore, bison, elk, deer, moving, in a circle around that nature, around that land, and ultimately created a really healthy soil stock. That soil stock is, has fertility, which makes it good for growing crops. Contemporary agriculture in this country specifically, we're continuously mining that soil fertility over all those years that was built by ecological principles and the process of grasses and grazing animals. So, homicide, suicide, herbicide, pesticide, fungicide kills things. So essentially, our current agricultural system, it's very mono-focused in its monocropping system, and it's good at producing lots of calories quickly, effectively, simply, and it's done that. It's created a boom in industrial ag, green revolution, created a boom in life potentiality, more calories to make more people, more abundant civilization. But what we're not factoring is the track record and the long-term impacts of that. And when you kill human beings, we can understand it when it just bring it back to a human being. If we take too many antibiotics, our system starts to tank. We don't have the immune function. We don't have the microbiome function. We don't have all the good bacteria. We're a skin bag of bacteria that are keeping the skin bag healthy. But we're only, the human being is only, a small part of the skin bag. There's so many other, essential bacterias that are creating the functionality of this life. We're a world. We're an Earth. So if we just sanitized ourselves every day with sanitizer and just fed ourselves like one thing, or said, all right, we're just going to do antibiotics because we need to kill what might, we ultimately kill the resilient system that is upholding the whole thing, and at a certain point it falls down. Again, not to say that there's not essential times when we need antibiotics. We have something that's come into the system and it's causing chaos, and we need something to curb that quickly. That being said, to just count on that we're just going to create a new antibiotic and a new thing to kill the pest of the day, of the week, of the moment, we're ultimately going to create a totally unhealthy, infested situation versus investing in the root health, the soil health, the base biological health of the system or the human being. We're always inside of a paradigm. And so the paradigm that I'm connected to now, even though it's not a new paradigm, it's an ancient paradigm of understanding the interconnection of all life. And it's a paradigm that many cultures, indigenous to place, indigenous to land, indigenous to their life, was part of a healthy system that needed to stay healthy so that they could stay healthy. And they were intimately tied to that moment to moment, this action has a reaction. This creates more fertility. This creates less fertility. This will continue to create life here. This will degrade. And when you're in that right there, you're managing and evolving it so that it's, healthy long term. And so that's kind of regenerative ag is now reintegrating and re-understanding ancient principles of ecology and of a perspective of humans aren't separate from nature. Right. We can be an integral part, a keystone species that creates a trophic cascade of benefit and a proliferation of life, or we can be a locus species where we create a total demise of the life under our care.
In the documentary, you talk, one of the core principles is that of this biosequestration, the drawdown of this this legacy load of carbon that we've released. And one of the people in the movie is this farmer by the name of Gabe Brown that really, I guess, epitomizes sort of what is possible when in terms of the polycultures and building in this resilience with different species and so forth. Talk a little bit about the Kiss the Ground Impact Fund and sort of how you work with the farmers and the ranchers when you're introducing these new principles to their existing sort of business or their existing agribusiness processes.
Yeah, so the Impact Fund got launched right after the film as a way for people to, okay, I'm inspired, I'm awakened, how can I help? And so we created an impact fund that's kind of working in, a few different tiers or a few different channels. In one channel, it's really focusing money to education. So there's actually two educational cuts. One that's going to be a farmer cut, 45 minutes less focused on climate and more focused on, farmer profitability. Mm-hmm. And then an educational cut designed for 6th grade to 12th grade classroom settings, also 45-minute format. And both of those formats also have included a piece that was really missing around the connection and homage and acknowledgement of indigenous wisdom and how that's really been instrumental and informative and kind of the underpinnings of regenerative practices and principles. And so, again, back to the education, we're providing the film for 114,000 classrooms for free, nice. Along with a workbook that allows for students to really watch the film and then kind of go deeper into understanding this whole principle and possibility. And that's likely can touch 30 million students. Nice. And so some of your funds are going to the distribution and supporting that to happen. And then on the farmer side, the fund is basically, we created a farmland program that provides 3 services to farmers. They essentially can get technical training to make the transition from farmers such as Gabe Brown and Ray Archuleta. Mm-hmm. So we partner with some of the best technical trainers that we know of, and so we pay for them to take technical training course in person or online, and then they get a mentor assigned to them for a 3-year period to kind of be a moral support of, essentially when you're making a transition to a new lifestyle, you need friends or, you need community that is going in that direction. Otherwise, you're going to go right back to your old habits. So mentorship. And then the third thing is soil testing, which allows them to technically understand the impact and the value of what is happening within the transformation of the rebuilding of their soil with the ongoing or the implementation of the practices. And then we have a hub, which is powered by Mighty Networks, which is kind of like a smaller version of Facebook that allows for specific groups who are, farmers who are going through this process can have a space to ask questions, learn, and engage with each other, so that there is a peer-to-peer learning that continues to happen. And then we can also funnel in all the resources that we're coming up to, like, oh, here's this loan program, or here's this, community sharing equipment hub for, agricultural equipment that's supporting regenerative ag, that you can, lease, or, have access to a no-till drill or a roller crimper. So putting in resources into that community, so there's peer-to-peer learning ongoingly happening, as well as, information that's helpful for those farmers. So essentially you're paying for farmers to be able to make this transition with those multi-tiers of support. And then you're also building advocates. What we found is that, excuse my French, but shit happens when you have powerful, passionate people talking about and enrolling people in, this is a good idea, this needs to happen. We saw that we weren't farmers. We weren't, we were passionate. I was a restaurateur. I was an advocate for the environment. I had always been kind of an evangelist for, good things, things I got excited about. But we just saw how much you can get done when you're passionate about something and you can communicate about it well. People get enrolled, people get touched, people get inspired and make change. So we've created an advocacy program, whether it's through, training people how to do regenerative gardening at their home, whether it's how to become building regenerative ag into your supply chain as somebody who's working on a business that uses natural resources that are coming from agriculture, called sourcing and supply, or our kind of hallmark course that came out along with the film is called the SAT, Soil Advocacy Training. You can think of that kind of like a climate reality, like Al Gore's training people to be climate change advocates. We're training people to be soil regeneration advocates, as the same kind of objective, but from a more kind of proactive, and the agriculture being the mechanism and the system that we're transforming, versus maybe the energy or the transportation sector, which need to be transformed too. It's not, that's the thing we don't want to perpetrate, is that the soil is not the silver bullet, that everything else can remain the same and we can just put all the carbon in the soil. No, we need to reduce. Someone said a long time ago that we need to stop the bleeding, but then we also need to heal the patient. Yeah. So healing the patient is really the regeneration of our soil. Yes, we need to stop the damages, the big destructive gushing of burning fossil fuels, and methane gas, and all the other greenhouse gases that are creating the warming effect, and bringing us to creating unstable weather patterns and shifting weather patterns. But we, again, the part that is so essential is, how do we start to heal the patient? How do we start to heal the damage we've done? And regenerative agriculture, to us, looks like the best solution that we could, give our lives to supporting.
And working off of that for a moment, once again, near the end of the documentary, there is sort of a mosaic of the different opportunities, with obviously the sequestration, soil-based sequestration is part of it. But then, there's this wonderful mosaic that you show about everything else that's happening in different corners of the world. As mentioned before we started, I talked to some folks that were trying to green the Sahara Desert with seawater. In the documentary, you talk a little about seaweed. Obviously, you're doing this, and this is what's most exciting. But I'm sure, just like I have my mind in a million things all the time. Are there other really interesting stuff that you come across as you're doing the soil work that you're like, wow, I wish I could do that too, because that'll, that could double our. Any other really cool technologies, cool things you're seeing in as you're at the epicenter of all of this that you might want to do next, or in 10 years from now?
I think our mission of our organization is to awaken people to the possibilities of regeneration. Regeneration is a process of renewal, restoration, healing, growth, taking something that's been broken, bruised, and battered and bringing it back into a state of health. So, I think that there's lots of, you mentioned the regreening the Sahara Desert. The film shows the Los Plateau in China. I think 44,000 14,000 square miles of land regenerated from a total barren wasteland to a green, living, productive ecosystem. It really is, there's nothing more inspiring than seeing life come back to where it's been degraded. Just like it's nothing more beautiful than seeing a battered and bruised, abused human being finding dignity, empowerment, and resilience, and coming back into their health. I think we can see this in all sectors. There's people doing, creating, kelp, creating 3D kelp farms in the oceans, and seeing how it's like it's like acupuncture. It's like just placing, certain things that have been eroded away from a natural ecosystem, going back and intentionally putting those in an environment, and assuring that they can proliferate and grow, just by the very nature of the minerals in the ocean, and the phytoplankton. And we can see, we could implement some things. Again, it's like tending to the wild. It's the way that California was tended for millennia by indigenous people. How can we work with these ecosystems to support them to continue to proliferate life, as well as to service us with nourishment and sustenance, and may we continue to have an attitude of thanksgiving for being able to participate in life's renewal, and being able to experience the bounty of that, and the sharing of that, and the gratitude for being able to participate in the cycle of life and the cycle of regeneration. So I would say that there's lots of exciting things, but the thing that excites me the most is, seeing people in all parts of the world connecting with an ecosystem and participating in it in a helpful way, and such that ecosystem is coming back to with more life, and that is also in the partnership with animals, and different plant species, and even the idea of being able to, in the way that we can take a healthy probiotic that helps our microbiome, the idea that we can again, using science to build indigenous species of biology that once were in soils and have been depleted, and being able to reintroduce those and seeing those continue to proliferate and to increase and create more water holding capacity in soil, creating the ability for roots to be more resilient to what has been left at the shadow of that soil and the lack of diversity in that soil that would ultimately not allow a plant to grow, now is allowing for a plant to be able to grow. So I would say what excites me is people participating in the rehabilitation, the regeneration of ecosystems, and that's happening in many different ways, in many different forms, with many different communities all around the world. And then, at another level, seeing people reconnecting to their historical indigenous relationship to land and place, and having that inform this not only land healing, but also cultural healing of disconnection that we all mostly feel when we're been separated so much from nature.
Excellent message. Beautiful message. Very inspiring. Ryland, it's been fascinating hearing about your journey. It's an amazing documentary, and just wishing you the best in continuing everything you're doing. For everybody that's going to be watching this episode or listening on the podcast, you've been listening to Ryland Engelhart, Executive Director and co-founder of Kiss the Ground, an amazing nonprofit leading the path in planetary regeneration. Check out the documentary Kiss the Ground on Netflix. You can listen to Ryland on the Kiss the Ground We Can Do This podcast. If you're in Southern California, go to Cafe Gratitude or Gracias, Madre. Ryland, it's been a pleasure having you. I really want to thank you for taking the time to come on and share all this knowledge with us. And as we say thank you for creating this better tomorrow, because clearly you are doing it not just better tomorrow for all of us, but better tomorrow for this beautiful planet that we all live on together. So really, thank you. It's been a great time talking to you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And just, if people are inspired, go to kisstheground.com and go find your path. There's a beautiful way for people to find an entry point that fits into your lifestyle of how you can participate in the regenerative movement. And I highly recommend becoming a soil advocate, which is, it's an 8-hour course that you can take over self-led, over time, that has you be a powerful advocate for the regenerative movement. And thank you. And, obviously, if you want to support, we're a nonprofit, so we live on donations. And so if you want to support our work, we would be grateful for that too. And we've created 60 short films over the last 7 years. So go check out some of those cool short films about different projects that reflect regeneration. And thank you for having me on today.
Excellent. And we'll put all those links into the show summary as well. So we'll direct everybody there. Great seeing you.